I didn't know about this mechanic until today, so I know Seth doesn't know about this mechanic. Apparently, YouTube now has a sort of power ranking for live viewers who are commenting and engaging with the stream and everything. First of all, it just seems like a good idea in general. You can see the people who are leaving comments and questions and engaging with the content. So you can do that if you want to, or already do, watch along with us on the KCSN YouTube channel. Apparently, you can get involved in the battle royale that can now actively occur in our comment section. The thing that I'm really excited about, Seth, is that now that I feel like I have officially, and let's say, you know what, in honor of Seth a couple of episodes ago with the biscuits and gravy, and if I say the Hungry Games have begun, I feel like there could be claws out. I'm just excited to try to figure out what the terms are going to be. What are the ebbs and flows going to be? Are we just going to get a lot of questions about how much Seth loves ball? Are we going to get a lot of questions about Charles Omenihu? Please don't just spam the chat. That's not going to do anybody any good. But Seth, do you have any advice for anyone who really wants to climb the ranks and to be the biggest weirdo of them all?
It's the same advice that I give everyone with every aspect of life. And the only reason I've found any success, what success that I've had, you slowly and painfully wear down your enemies.
And we are your enemies. I'll say this with confidence. Pazlou in the chat says, how about those Chris Sims quarterback rankings? We will spend more time today talking about the YouTube chat power rankings than we will about any quarterback rankings that have come out in the last several days. Welcome to Only Weird Games. I'm Joshua Brisco here with Seth Keysor. Seth, we're going to work through some position groups or some players at certain positions that you've been highlighting. We're going to take a couple of questions throughout the show. Feel free to go ahead and add those in the chat. If maybe great questions give you more points. I don't know. Seth, how are we feeling over there in the Keysor household?
Oh, we're feeling terrific. I saw there was a question about Jamal Charles in the chat.
Whoa, star that now, Tucker, and make them number one.
Boom. Anytime anyone, anywhere asks me about Jamal Charles, I am immediately happier, which, by the way, we're celebrating today on Only Weird Games. Happy Craig Stout is returning to the lab day for those who celebrate.
It's about time.
Honest to goodness.
One professional on this podcast feed again.
And as a bonus, it made Kent cry. So that's always like, yes, good things are happening here. So here's a question for you, Josh. So one of us, you, myself, or Nathaniel Taylor, has to leave the podcast for a period of, it felt like years. I'm going to say it's been at least 5 years since Craig was part of KCSN, give or take. Who would be the most likely, if one of us had to leave, to cry when that leaver returned? Because I know who I think it would be.
Well, Nate is literally doing what you've described. So maybe we'll find out next week.
We'll be like, when Nate's gone, the days are like dog years. Time without Nathaniel Taylor drags. If you ever needed to prove the theory of relativity, have some Nathaniel Taylor in your life and then don't.
Who would be likely to cry at the reunion?
Yeah, or the idea of a reunion, because he popped in. It was a wonderful surprise. And then he was like, how would you feel if I joined you every Wednesday? And Kent teared up. He was so excited. It was a wonderful thing.
Okay, I'm going to answer your question. Then I have a follow-up question for Tucker. And Tucker, you can either answer this over the air or just in the chat, and then I'll read it, whatever's easier for you. Did Kent know? Did Kent know that was happening?
No.
No, nobody knew. Only Craig and I knew. Craig, me, and BJ were the only three people that knew in the whole entire universe that was going to happen. And Craig wanted to have a genuine reaction from both of those guys on live and recorded. And I also have text messages that I have screenshotted that describe exactly what Kent and Maddie's reaction was going to be. And it's spot on. It's perfect.
That's beautiful. I didn't know that they were out of. I saw the reaction and everything, but Kent and Maddie are just such gifted actors that I thought maybe that was a show for the stream. So that's fantastic. The clip is great. You can watch it, and now you have two reasons to listen to the lab. You have both Maddie Lane and Craig Stout. So two great reasons to check out an excellent podcast here on these very same feeds. Sorry, Kent. Seth, I think the answer. I think the answer is Nate. I guess it could be you depending on the day. I don't think it's me. And I'm not like a big don't cry tough guy kind of thing. I just don't think that's what would get me.
Yeah, that's not your type of emoting. I think if something really great happened, you're more so how would I phrase this? You're someone who gets emotional at the idea of something really good happening. Not that one of us returning wouldn't be good, but more like if like, you know what? I'm going to embarrass KCSN's greatest employee, Tucker D. Franklin, by just noting I felt like watching live in the draft. My very favorite part of the draft this year was seeing Tucker get, I would call it the credit he deserves, but he deserves even more. And I mean that. I'm not just, saying
a portion of the credit he deserves.
He received a portion of the credit. It was the proverbial offering. When we give the offering every Sunday, we're only giving back a portion. Now, am I comparing Tucker to God? Apparently.
Okay, that's the best of the options, I think.
So I have known you a long time, and that particular moment I could tell was maybe a little emotional for you.
Yeah, I was amped.
When you're amped, but like when you're rooting for someone, and not that you don't root for me and Nate, but there's a difference there for you. I don't think it would be you. I definitely agree it would be me or Nate. I think it would depend on the day, because there are some days where it would certainly make me cry, and other days where I'd be like, that's awesome. You like get all whatever. It depends on how long it's been, the level of surprise. Like, I think like if for one reason or another, and I don't think it would go down this way, but like, let's say if Nate left and had to, and it had been like 6 months since we talked to him.
Yeah.
Then I think we might both cry a little.
Oh, yeah, I think that's fun. Yeah, I mean, if he was like stuck at the space station or something, and then we got to do a podcast with him back on Earth again, I think that'd be very moving.
Right.
I don't, I've never asked Craig and Kent if they speak off air. I've always just assumed it was kind of a Mike and Mike deal where they just, the magic died a long time ago and they just try to keep it up for appearances. So,
1,000,000%. Tranview has a good comment here. Seth has the Dick Vermeil crybaby temperament, in my opinion. You're not wrong. Okay. There really is that whole, I mean, it's a ridiculous, it's a ridiculous song. Was that, tough little boys grow up to be dads, they turn into big babies again. I'm not going to say I was that tough of a little boy. I don't think I was, but there is something about having kids that just softens you with each kid. Something about, at least in the case for most dads I know, having a daughter that softens you up a little bit, and something about getting older. You become more and more over the years, at least for me, I've become just so grateful about all the things I have that I could never earn and certainly haven't. And you just, you start to appreciate so much good things. You just become this genuine softie. I almost cried at my birthday this year. And all we were doing, I was just sitting there, and we have big group birthday parties. And because we have 1 million kids and we have 1 million family members and they all live close, so everyone can come. And man, I was just sitting there next to my 2 big sisters, and I was watching my wife cut up the yellow cake that she made for me because she's awesome. And my parents are there. My in-laws were there. Extended family was there. Some of my best friends were there. Thanks for coming. I can't believe you didn't drive 10 hours for an hour-long birthday party.
Yeah, I mean, this is a hell of a way to reveal I didn't get an invite. I mean,
yeah, touche. That was a barrier for you.
It was. I didn't know. I don't think I have your home address.
And so like, and I was just looking around the room, and I was like, how does it get this good? Like, how can a room be so full of so many people I love? How is this possible? And so things like that start to get you, and you become more of a crier. I bet if I talked about this for 3 more minutes straight, I'd probably start crying.
I
That's
think
how
if
it
you-
goes.
I think if you had not thrown a jab at me for not attending your Minnesotan birthday party, I was waiting, but I could see it. I was gonna say, I think we might get Seth to cry on this
Yeah.
show right now, talking about a recent time that he cried.
Yeah. No, honestly, if someone made me wax eloquent about what it's meant to do radio and podcasting with you and Nate for the last crud, how many years has it been now? It's been like 6 years.
Yeah.
I'd probably cry eventually because I'm so grateful. So that I think that's what happened. So I think what we've decided now is that it's me. Like it would almost certainly be me.
Yeah, and for me, it's really just that I, for decades now and for decades into the future, I'm just sort of compiling all of my feelings and then planning on a day in my 50s, maybe, when all the
Sweet.
circumstances are exactly perfect for me to feel and unpack them all. And I think I could probably, I don't even know if I'm going to need the whole day for that, really. I think I could probably do that before dinner time at least, and then get to kind of relax after.
Yeah, eat a heavy meal, get some
Yeah.
rest thereafter.
Yeah, I think
It's a flawless plan. The one problem, I think, and I could be wrong here, I think that's one reason why as you get older, you become more emotional because some of those things that you've kind of smushed down, they start to leak out a little.
yeah, that
And you're
makes
just
sense.
like, yeah, but I didn't go to my law school graduation, and my mom only told me years later how much it would have meant to her to see me walk across the aisle. And I suppressed that for years.
Right.
But then all of a sudden, Isabel gives me a locket for my birthday last year that says, you'll always be my hero and I'll always be your little girl. And I'm like, God, everything is so sad, and you just that's just how it goes.
Seth, I think it's important that you hear this from one of your younger friends, if I can call us that. There is nothing shameful about the fact that you have gotten leakier as you've gotten older. It happens to lots of people. It's just a medical thing.
Thank goodness.
Nothing wrong with a little bit of leakiness. You know where you don't want any leakiness, though?
Where?
In your trenches. This is not a beginning of an ad read. If you're a Times Ours listener, it might have sounded like one for a second. It is not the segue into an ad read. It is a segue into Seth's most recent piece in the Chief of the North newsletter, and I think, not that it was an incredible arms race, and I think the most interesting things from today's press conferences that the Chiefs had. It is still June 12th, and so I did not have extensive notes from press appearances from Kareem Hunt, Jaden Hicks, Gardner Minshew, but there were some things from Andy Reid and Kingsley Suamataia, and you've got a new story in the newsletter that we teased on Tuesday, kind of taking a look at some of these parentheses low-key Chiefs for 2025. You want to give us a little bit on kind of the ethos of the story here, what people can expect going forward about these specific players? Give us the quick 30,000-foot view, and then we're going to take a pick to each of these players and figure out what they're going to bring.
Absolutely. So basically, it came to me when I was writing about Jaden Hicks, and I was just talking to you about how much more important he is for the plan this year than he's getting credit for. And part of that is I don't think people are really crediting what a lost Justin Reed might be.
Yep.
And so, but it won't be as much. So because again, cornerback room is way better from all appearances. And if the safety room doesn't fall off at all, well, boy, howdy, are we cooking with gas? And I love it. And so when I was thinking about him, I was thinking to myself, man, if Jaden Hicks was a rookie this year, let's say he was like a second round pick this year, or even picked where he was picked in the draft last year, and had all the rookie hype, well, people would be talking about him nonstop. And I started to think about that in terms of what are some players beyond the superstars are obvious, right? Everyone knows the most important players for whether they win the Super Bowl or get back to the Super Bowl in 2025 are Patrick Mahomes and Chris Jones, maybe Travis Kelce. This is the first year that there's even a maybe with Kelce, but that's because they're starting to rebuild the offense around the receivers. So everyone knows that. People talk about George Karlaftis all the time. People talk about, Xavier Worthy a ton, his development. Rashee Rice coming back. Everyone's talking about it. The tackle situation. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone knows Creed Humphrey is vital. Everyone knows Trey Smith is a good player. And so I was thinking, what are some players that are really important and could have a big impact, not necessarily will, could have a huge impact on the floor and the ceiling of this team, and also just aren't being talked about that much. And then, so one easy example, and we've talked about, Nate covered this. Everyone's talking about, we need better running back play than what they had in 2024. We need it. We need more explosives for sure. That alone, you can have exactly what you had last year and one explosive play per game from the running back position. Fair enough. That would be a good improvement. And everyone wants to talk about Brashard Smith. I get it. Like this film, more as a runner than I thought I would. And I think he could cause some problems. He's got incredible speed for a running back. I mean, he's got good speed for a receiver. He's got exceptional speed for a running back. Everyone wants to talk about him. Well, what if Elijah Mitchell stays healthy? Does Kareem Hunt have anything left? Why didn't they sign Dobbins? Which, by the way, I think would have been a really easy thing to do considering his skill set and what they need, but whatever. Though, and the guy that people talk about the least with it is the guy who's probably the most likely to be able to move the needle, and that's Isaiah Pacheco. So that's the criteria there is, are they important? And are they kind of being under talked about? Because we love to talk about rookies. We love to talk about new signings. But like Hollywood Brown, toast of the town last year. Now, after kind of how last year went, everyone's like, eh. And then, but yet he's still wildly important. So that's what I did. I think I picked 7 Chiefs. And what I'm going to do moving forward, not for all of them, because I've like already reviewed Christian Fulton's film in detail. I'll do like a Kingsley Suamataia as one of them. I'm going to do a film review. I've talked about the why here, why they are that low-key important guy. And then I'm going to kind of talk about what in terms of the film from 2024 and maybe how they fit moving forward with 3 or 4 of them.
I think it's going to make it a fun chat to have now to kind of underline some of these guys to make sure that anybody, at least anybody who's listening or watching this show in June, it is not overlooking these players. So you can feel smart in week 1, week 2, week 5, as these guys are becoming, part of the real story of the season. We will not be overlooking them here. And let's start with Kingsley Suamataia on the offensive side of the trenches. Because he spoke today, and I wouldn't swear on a stack of Bibles, but I think it's the first time he's been at the podium, maybe since the start of last year. You would have had some availability in like Super Bowl week and everything, but obviously you're not trotting the backup rookie left tackle who's had a tough year, So interested to hear from him today. I would say that first, Andy Reid talked about him plenty, and that's typically how it goes. You're going to ask the coach about the player who's going to come up later because you're writing a story. You want to have quotes on everybody. He said he looks more comfortable at guard. He's picking it up well. Then he's going up against Chris Jones, so he'll be prepared. Practicing against Chris Jones doesn't mean you can block Chris Jones. He did have a good story about the a little post-game conversation he had with Zach Allen after that Broncos game. And so he talked a bit about, quote, falling in love with the guard position and how it feels like it's his rookie season, just at a new position, which I think you could kind of slant for good or bad. And honestly, I just wouldn't read into it too much. The onus of that was a fresh start in a lot of ways, right?
Yep.
He's not competing for the left tackle job or the right tackle job for that matter. He is either starting at left guard or he is a second-year draft pick who is not in the lineup after not being in the lineup in the first year. Hard to build a lot of confidence that way. So his attitude seems good. He obviously has huge shoes to fill. Those were some things that I thought were mildly interesting out of pressers today. Obviously, Seth, the thing that matters is, can you step into Joe Thuney's spot and not let the unit down? Now, Does that mean he has to play like Joe Thuney, or does that just mean he has to be a certain height to ride this ride, if you will?
Absolutely. And that's where, and I think what'll be great here today, other than like Jaden Hicks and Christian Fulton, whose film I've already reviewed, is to kind of talk about the why. And you've nailed it with Kingsley Suamataia. The why he's so low-key important is that if he's not able to play at an average to even a little below average level at left guard, you're going to have another year, unless Mike Caliendo makes a leap, unless Norzad makes a leap, something like that. You're going to have no matter how much they improve at left tackle. And maybe it's a ton. That would be great. But if you end up with a gaping hole at left guard, you're still going to have problems with consistency and protection. You can protect, for lack of a better word, or to reuse a word over and over, a left guard more than a left tackle. You can hide them a little bit better, right? But if what you're looking for is consistently good pass protection across the board, which doesn't mean perfect. You're still going to get got sometimes, especially against good teams. But if you want it to be consistently good, you can't have a glaring weakness. You can cover a glaring weakness at left guard. or right guard, center's tougher, tackles are tougher. We saw that last year. You can hide that, but then you got to scheme around it and you narrow your options. I say this all the time, that an offensive coordinator, your goal is to have the widest possible, like in terms of personnel, the widest possible number of options in your playbook. You want the whole playbook to be open constantly. You want to have great pass protection so you could dial up a shot play at any time because you trust your guys to win one-on-one. You want great receivers who can separate against man, zone, blah, blah, blah. You want a quarterback who can operate, the hurry up. He can, read defenses pre and post snap. You can do both sides of the field, all that stuff. If you have a glaring weakness at left guard, it narrows your options a little bit. Even if the rest of the line takes a huge step forward, you're still going to have that problem. And that's why he's low-key important, is that he can drag the floor down. He can't probably drag the ceiling down, but you can drag the floor down. But you know what? I should rephrase that, because we think of ceiling in terms of like pop, right? Are they capable of playing at their best, putting up 60 points in a game? Like, that's ceiling. There's also a ceiling when it comes to consistency. Right. And that's way more important than how good you are when you're at your absolute best. I've said for years, one thing that separates Patrick Mahomes from the other best quarterbacks in the league, and he lost that a little last year, not as much as people think, but whatever, isn't just that Josh Allen's absolute apex play is as good as Patrick Mahomes. And that might not be popular in the chat. The thing is, he doesn't reach it as frequently.
Right.
That's the thing that separates the two of them.
And Josh Allen's bad games are way worse. That's where I thought you were going to say. Patrick Mahomes' bad games are usually your favorite quarterback's average game, which
absolutely
incredibly few exceptions.
Yes. And so that consistency separates him. Jamal Charles that we mentioned earlier, what separated him is that every run looked that way. Like, if he got tackled for a 3-yard gain, you were like, whoa, what a play by the defense. Yeah. That consistency separates. And Kingsley Suamataia is important because he can make it harder for them to be as consistent, even if it's not as hurtful as left tackle. But if he can be average, now all of a sudden, if you've really upgraded the left tackle position, you're like, I like Creed Humphrey, I like Trey Smith. We can live with Juwan Taylor outside the penalties, which are a bummer. Now, suddenly, again, you're cooking with gas, in theory.
I'm going to keep the pace up here because we're going to talk about quite a few guys, and also there are a couple of questions percolating already, but there will be more on that when you take a look at those Week 18 snaps and see if you see a man who fell in love with the guard position, or at least a man who you think can do that at a high level going into 2025. The other piece in the trenches is somebody who I don't think this show ever underrates, but I was on 96.5 The Fan a couple of weeks back, and at the very end, I said, quick, 30-second answer here. Who's the most underrated member of the Kansas City Chiefs? I said, Charles Omenihu. Mm-hmm. And then I realized I had 28 more seconds because that was like, sorry, guys, I answered that too quickly because it seems that clear to me. This is you're going to share some of your notes with your Kingsley, some of the parts kind of breakdown. But why is Charles Omenihu so important, and why is he getting overlooked a little bit in your mind?
He never played at 100% last year, and we always move on. That's what we do in football. We move on very quickly as soon as someone plays at a certain level. And now it's hey, do you think Ashton Gelati will be able to win? And hey, by the way, I do. I love me some Ashton Gelati film. But with Charles Omenihu, he hasn't played a full season with the Chiefs. Is he now a full year and a half from his ACL injury? The fact that he came in and was able to play half a season and was solid, wasn't great, wasn't even good by his standards, but was solid. After tearing his ACL when he did, that's impressive, and he should be lauded for that. He didn't look quite as explosive. Did you know that Charles Omenihu has 36-inch arms?
I did know 36. I knew he had some pythons out there.
Yeah, I mean, you can just see him. But so here's the thing with Charles Omenihu. He is a 6'5", 280-pounder with 36. That's like Carlos Dunlap level arms. Maybe not quite. I think Dunlap might be like 37 inches. That guy's a freak. But he has length. He has size. But he also has a little bit of explosion, so he can legitimately threaten the edge a bit. Not a ton, but a bit, and that keeps tackles honest with him, and that's what allows him to be a good pass rusher from the edge. last year, and makes him really tough to stop in the interior. Last year, he didn't quite have that, right? He just wasn't quite as explosive. And so the question here, and this is going to be a really important question for the pass rush, is Charles Omenihu 2024 Charles Omenihu or 2023 Charles Omenihu? Because that 10 to 15% difference is where you straddle that line between guy and dude. Because he was a dude in 2023. He was a guy in 2024. Still valuable. Still glad he's on the field. But the Chiefs pass rush distinctly lacks dudes besides Chris Jones. Karlaftis is just I swear every year he's like seeing how close he can get to that line and then just kind of hang out. With a guy like George Karlaftis, who's about as good a guy as you can get in terms of his play style and ability, having another dude is such a massive difference. And it's one of the things that allowed the Chiefs defense in 2023 to be elite, not just good or even very good. They were arguably down the stretch the very best defense in the NFL in 2023. And that's why they won the Super Bowl. Yes, Patrick Mahomes played perfect down the stretch in several playoff games when he absolutely had to. But the reason they were still in that game is because the defense was like, I guess we got to stop the Niners again. Okay. And so that's with Omenihu. That's why he matters so much, because when you look at the improvements elsewhere, potentially on defense, getting the pass rush to ratchet up a notch besides Chris Jones is huge.
So according to Mock Draftable, not that Google is something I can trust anymore at this point in the internet's history, but on mockdraftable.com, they have Charles Omenihu with 36-inch arms even. That's 98th percentile.
It's insane.
Seth, Carlos Dunlap on Mock Draftable, and I've seen similar measurements other places, but this is the one I'm going with right now. 34 5/8.
Wow. And those are crazy long arms.
88th percentile for Carlos Dunlap.
But no, 36-inch arms are nuts. Like, that's like, and so that man was built in a lab to be a Spags defensive end.
I don't recognize most of the names who are like being compared to Omenihu and on the like the percentile overlay kind of thing, because most of them also aren't NFL players at this level. You do like combine measurements and stuff. You can sort by all athletes in general. It really is amazing. He is such a fun, weird player in a lot of ways who feels so perfectly fit to this system. I'll also add the thing. Oh, go ahead. You got something fun?
I grabbed one because I had a feeling. Yeah. Now, Charles Omenihu is not as shredded as this guy.
Okay.
But the one guy who was close, Tano Passanio. 35 and 5/8-inch arms, which makes sense when you saw him.
Yeah,
he was an alien. The difference between Omenihu and Passanio is that Omenihu's more explosive and has a little more bend and flexibility to him. And so it's like if you gave Tano Passanio a little bit of bend, a little bit of flexibility, a little more explosion. It's a cool thing. And that guy was a freak. I can see why they took the shot on him, even though he was never more than like kind of an average type guy.
I would have spent a second-round draft pick on him in any sport. Just figure it out. Like, and the NHL draft is here. Have you ever been on Blades before? I don't care. I don't really care. So we'll find something for you to do.
We are fighting a gorilla.
You're right. Yes. Yep. And with the number 1 overall pick in the 100 men versus 1 gorilla draft, humanity selects Tano Passanio.
Oh my goodness! We've done this before, but seriously, training camp. Go to training camp if you can, because it really allows you some perspective. Chris Jones is one that people do not realize what a mammoth human he is, and how good a shape he looks like he's in these days. Like, he just
wild.
But him, Passanio, and Alan Bailey, it was like you realize, like, I am just not the same species as these guys. Like, they are just like. Passanio, I mean, seriously, I don't know how anyone could be that chiseled. Like, at 290 pounds, he weighed 289. I bet his body fat was like 5%. It was.
I think his body fat was negative. I don't like. I think he is a scientific anomaly in every way possible. He's got midichlorians or something. I don't know. You know what? Let's go ahead and take our time out here, because of all the guys on your list, we've talked about. Let's be real. We've talked about all these players at some point over the course of the offseason, because we talk about the Chiefs twice a week at minimum, just on this show. But of everybody on your list, I think I am the most fired up about one name in particular, and it is by far the least likely in a lot of ways given my history. You may believe that. You'd be wrong, though. I'll explain on the other side of this quick break.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story, like Brain Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Brain Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner impossible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Folks, it's playoff time, and if you're still just watching the games, then you're missing out. With Pick 6 from DraftKings, you can turn your hoops knowledge into real cash. Just make your picks, track your score, and if you hit all 6, you're looking at bigger payouts than Prize Picks flex plays. Nobody's dropping better payouts than Pick 6. Hit 6 picks, and that's 25 times your cash. And if you beat your competition, you could be looking at a 500 times bag in your pocket. And right now, new customers can get $50 in bonus picks with just a $5 entry. Here's what you got to do. The playoffs are on, so why not take a shot at making a little money while you're watching? Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app right now and use code KCSN. That's code KCSN to play $5 and get $50 in bonus picks. Better payouts, bigger wins, only on Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdictions. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 bonus picks that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. Terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
This is the second time I've seen Tucker's read there, but it's the first time I've just gotten to watch the chat reacting because a lot of people are watching now who must not have seen it on Tuesday. Man, it just absolutely fills me with joy. The only thing that bums me out is that there's nothing that Seth or I could do to have what I would call, quote, the best part of the show today. Because it's Paul Dano's disclaimer at the end.
Someone has got to find a way to make sure Pick 6 is aware that there's nobody who's doing ad reads better than Tucker D. Franklin of KCSN. Because that is just, I just, every time it gets better. I was a little distracted on Tuesday, and I finally got to really watch it. And I'm just like, it's so great. And it keeps getting better. Every time I'm like, I think we've peaked, and Tucker's just out here like, I have not yet begun to peak, sir. What's the Dennis thing from Always Sunny? When I peak, you'll know. And it's like, whoa.
Yeah, no, actually, I didn't care for how you said that either.
That's
all right.
Said it in the show.
Here, I'm sure. Here's what I'm fired up about, Seth. I've mentioned this a couple times in the last month or something. I think more than any other Chief in recent memory, and I'm open to suggestions if you've got somebody who comes to mind, I think Isaiah Pacheco has benefited and then suffered as the victim of expectations more than any other Chief I can think of. As a 7th round pick, it's a win if he makes the team. And it's a huge win if he's in any sort of committee for years to come, right? That is a victory. When he's a starter for a while. He's a starter in Patrick Mahomes' high-profile offense. You're starting to get chatter about Isaiah Pacheco. Is he a top 10 running back? Fringe? Is he closer to the top 5? Is he top 12? You said my running back's top 12. Boo. You get all of that when you're talking yourself into this guy as the workhorse, the engine, given the Chiefs' running game. and Kareem Hunt returns. Kareem Hunt comes in when Isaiah Pacheco gets hurt. You see Kareem Hunt doing the exact same thing, right? Of like, well, hey, he's on the couch a couple weeks. Hey, you know what? This is pretty nice. 20-something carries for Kareem Hunt, 2 weeks off the couch. Good for it. Kareem Hunt saving the offense by the end of the year.
3.8 yards on every one of them.
And by the end of the year, it's, man, I'm tired of watching Kareem Hunt run for 3.8 yards. Week 4, it was Kareem Hunt, 4.8 yards, 3.8 yards. At the end of the season, you're cursing it, right?
Yep.
This is also, so Isaiah Pacheco gets hurt, comes back, and he looks like a lesser version of himself than the version that was getting thrown in prematurely, in my mind, to top 10 running back conversations.
Right.
This also is, by and large, Kareem Hunt is a fun example of that. This is the running back cycle. I know that we've gotten away from the height of running backs don't matter versus only running backs matter, or whatever the discourse was for a time in there. But this is a pretty common way for it to go. And we're going to be able to do this when we talk about Hollywood Brown. You did this talking about Charles Omenihu. We'll do this talking about any injured player who leaves and returns and looks like a lesser version of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
The drop-off of the hype is in my mind, just as misguided as it was to try to argue that he was a top 5, top 10 running back at the peak of his powers. He was never that guy. We knew that, but he was a very good, useful player. Right now, this Chiefs offense is going to need, in my mind, I think it's probably true for you because he's one of your underrated low-key Chiefs, Keys, but the Chiefs need a guy who can have some consistent carries, who can be comfortable in the offense, who can be perhaps the first prong of a 3-pronged backfield. I think it's completely reasonable to expect Isaiah Pacheco to do that in 2025. And I've gotten more pushback on that than I would have expected, because I think a lot of people are just kind of have that last flavor of not quite the same runner before as he was before. Now he's like injury prone because he plays running back. I don't know. I think some of that's been misguided. That's my Isaiah Pacheco take. What's yours?
I think that's a great take for starters. I think one of the reasons players get turned on to an extent, not turned on, like that's a strong way, but people get turned off by a player is when they identify a certain trait or weakness or problem, and then that's all they talk about in relation to that player. I would add to the expectations factor with Pacheco. Clyde Edwards-Helaire came in first-round pick, got hurt pretty early in a way that seemed to rob him of like 5% of his explosiveness, and he did not have that to lose. Yep, didn't. I actually went back recently and watched that first game, and I was like, I think this version of him could have done a lot more. And he still stayed in the league. Good on him. By all accounts, an incredible teammate, all that, but just wasn't what they were hoping. He was so not explosive, similar to what we see with Kareem Hunt now, that Pacheco coming in, seeing a guy with league average pop, because that's what he has. Isaiah Pacheco is not like, people are like, oh, he's such an explosive runner. No, Saquon Barkley is an explosive runner, right? Christian McCaffrey's an explosive runner. I mean, like these are like, and I'm not just talking like some of the best guys in the league. There are plenty of running backs with more explosion than Isaiah Pacheco. But because he had league average explosion, it looked completely different than what we saw with Clyde. And that's where I think that hurt him as well, because it looked so different and he was able to have some success that, like you said, people start extrapolating this. He's always had his vision improved throughout his rookie season, but just because, and that's another thing, people see vision improving, so then they extrapolate, oh, it's going to keep getting better. And it kind of tapped out at a certain point. Maybe he just reached the end of what he can visually process and then react to. That's sometimes you reach a ceiling.
Right.
And the ceiling being one of the best athletes in the world, because you're in the NFL and running back's hard, that's perfectly fine. I agree with you completely on all that. The thing with him, like what we've talked about, is they need more explosive plays at running back. The only guy on the roster who's proven he can do that for the Kansas City Chiefs is Isaiah Pacheco. And can he do it as often as like let's say Elijah Mitchell is perfectly healthy for the first time in 2 years. Yes, he's faster if he's perfectly healthy.
Right.
But that's not nearly as guaranteed. Brashard Smith's a rookie. Kareem Hunt does not have explosion. The guy who's most likely, that's what they needed from the run game last year, one 20-yard gain. The example that I used in the article was this 10-yard run or 11-yard run on 1st and 10. It wasn't anything too special. The blocking was terrific, but you could see the difference. Had he been 0.1 second slower, it would have been a 5-yard gain.
Right.
That's what happened with Kareem Hunt last year. Okay. Being that 0.1 second faster, you get into the secondary, get to that second level, you run physically, you fall forward, 11-yard gain. They didn't have many of those last year. They didn't have 11-yard gains. You don't need to rip off a 30-yard gain for it to be a chunk play as a running back. A 15-yard gain takes you from the 30 to midfield almost.
Right.
Those things were what they were missing, and he's your most likely guy to do it, and that's why he's low-key so important, because if he can just return to that, then they've reached a level where they know they can have an excellent offense with that level of Isaiah Pacheco, because they did it in 2022.
And I think also that can all still be true while being a little bit underwhelmed by the running back plan and the room in general. Like you mentioned Dobbins. Like obviously health is the enormous thing for this guy, but like I was sort of surprised. Like, oh yeah, Nick Chubb hadn't signed anywhere yet. Like, would you take a flyer on one of the best running backs of this generation coming off of unbelievable, disastrous injury? I don't know that you expect.
Tried.
The burst probably isn't there, but can you look like Nick Chubb in some of these ways that made you? I don't know. So all of that to say, they still could have done more for the running back room, but I think we're on the same page that Isaiah Pacheco has fallen too far. And maybe, again, it is a running back cycle where even like before last season, before all of Clyde's PTSD and the vomiting stuff and all the things that kept him out of camp and all of that off the field for a while, even in that period of time, something similar had happened to Clyde, where he was way overrated and way overvalued because of the draft pick at the time. And then by the time he was RB3 in training camp last year, there were people that cut Clyde. I was like, what are you talking about? They are relying on him to have a role here. And obviously he wasn't able to fulfill that role. They had the injury to Pacheco. P. Ryan was such a late ad that he never really doesn't feel like you got 100% into the offense. And then that's where your strategy comes back to bite you. I don't think they got quite as many redundancies at running back as they did, say, at left tackle this year. But
right.
I do think that they're putting some faith in Pacheco being more of the guy we saw pre-injury than post. I think that's a good bet. The other guy whose expectations disappeared with an injury, and a little bit, not quite the case. We know this. But from a national perspective, if you just thought Hollywood Brown never played football last year, you would be forgiven. He was injured on the first offensive rep of the preseason and then came back so late, even in the playoffs. Oh, maybe you get a little more from Hollywood here. Not a full factor in the way that I think we all assumed he would have been if he would have had a season with the team. But do you have any reason to be less excited about Hollywood in 2025 than you were going into the 2024 season?
No, he looked perfectly explosive to close out the year. Their first play, go watch the first play of the Super Bowl and then immediately turn it off. I thought we were about to see approximately 25 RPOs because they hit Brown, nice gain, first down, and I was like, yes, this is yes. And the way the Eagles were playing them, that would have worked well, and Fangio would have adjusted because Fangio is a great defensive coordinator. But he looked explosive, looked fast. He's still relatively young. The great thing about Hollywood Brown, all the things that we said last year are still true about him in terms of he's at his best against man coverage. He's at his best in the intermediate portion of the field. He can threaten deep. He's an experienced receiver who understands how to move against zone. He can win one-on-one on the backside, which is they need that. And my hope is they use him like that this year. They didn't use him like that down the stretch last year. I was really disappointed by that. So that's the thing. Like, I want to see, him running some backside digs next year. Like, let's give him the opportunity to win one-on-one while we're running trips to this side of the field. Let's see that. And he's the guy that can best do that other than, Rashee Rice, if he's fully healthy. We saw a preview of it last year at the beginning. So, I mean, he might be a guy who can do that too, but you've got other uses for him and Hollywood Brown, or him and Xavier Worthy. Brown, in some ways, is a really ideal complement. In other ways, like you wish you had like a true X receiver, which I know that.
Pause.
Yes.
Let's do it. Sean Kurtz, he followed the instructions. Thank you, Sean. He said, I was told to table this question from Tuesday's show. Sean, thank you so much. I mean this. Thank you for actually remembering and actually putting it back in the chat, because I 100% would have forgotten, even though it was really important to me on Tuesday. It just wouldn't have been here. So thank you for doing that. Seth, could you please explain to us Chiefs fans what an X receiver is and what an X receiver typically looked like under Reed? Probably the only big question we'll have time for today. We'll keep doing questions throughout the summer, but the X wide receiver, you might need to even take another step back, because I want Sean's questions answered, Seth, but I also want you to briefly explain the relationship between the Chiefs version of an X receiver to what appears to be everyone else's version of an X receiver. But of that means.
Generally speaking, what you're going to get, and you ask 20 people this question, you're going to get 20 different answers. Okay. So generally speaking, if you're thinking archetype X receiver, this might be people a little bit older, Andre Johnson.
Oh no, do we have people watching the show who are too young to remember Andre Johnson?
I think we might.
Is it happening to me?
Welcome to the party, pal.
Cam Scattaboo didn't know Calvin Johnson's face, so that was upsetting.
That's deeply upsetting.
Yeah.
Also, okay.
I said upsetting, not surprising.
Yeah, and Calvin Johnson's a guy you could name as the archetype X receiver too. It's just Calvin Johnson. I try to leave him out of conversations about receivers, Randy Moss, because that's not right. That's not we're just looking for the next 6'6", 235 pounder who runs a 4.340. It's okay.
I'll keep my eyes out.
yeah. I too would love seeing that. So it's with Chris Jones, I would love to see another 6'6", 300 pounder who moves like he weighs 240. Yes. I agree. And
has anyone asked Tano Passanio to run a route? I don't know. Yeah. I don't know.
That is Tano Passanio. That's such a great thing. So an X receiver is generally a guy who's going to be a big physical receiver who lines up on the line of scrimmage, who lines up on the boundary, right? Not in the slot. You are generally having him run a lot of digs, inside routes, some fades, some down the field stuff. Ideally, he's got downfield speed. He's strong enough to beat press coverage. He runs a lot of those boundary routes, but has the ability to separate from it. He has the ability to be the point man when you're running trips and just shake off contact at the line of scrimmage. And those are the traits you generally look for, is a bigger, stronger receiver that you trust to wall off the defender as he's running a slant and that sort of stuff. That's your prototypical X receiver. Andre Johnson is a great one to name because he's at least a little bit accessible. Another guy that's not really accessible in that is Julio Jones. Yeah. I mean, but Julio Jones could have been one of the best slot receivers to ever live too.
Julio's
so that's
weird.
Yeah. He was just a complete freak. I went back and rewatched his highlights for one reason or another a few days ago, and I was like, good God, what is wrong with that guy? So
some of those, this is just the exact age that I am now, but now I'm getting, the Instagram reels or the TikTok edits of Julio Jones just chasing down defenders who picked off a pass. Man, I'll watch those for an hour.
They're so much fun. It's watching it. It's that's when he really unlocked his speed the most.
Yeah. Just take off and catch that guy.
Well, it's easier to run when you don't have to tuck in a ball high and tight,
or worry about where a defender is or what your route is. It's just
you lose just a little bit of that speed. So that's
real quick, just so I don't have to just so I can get this out of the way. Do you know who has the same length arms as Charles Omenihu?
No,
Calvin Johnson.
My God,
36.0. It's his RAS score. I've got the math bomb card here and everything.
Yeah. And your X receiver would also typically be a jump ball guy kind of thing. You're going to run end zone fades to him. End zone fades aren't a good idea. But again, Calvin Johnson convinced a whole generation of coaches that it was. It's well, look at, he's doing it. It's yes, again, unless Wilt Chamberlain got cloned, this is a bad idea.
Right.
So that's generally your prototypical X receiver. Under Andy Reid, except when he had Terrell Owens, and even Owens. So Reed lines up. His primary guy is often the Z receiver, which is
give us a quick one, just a quick little
You're gonna be in and out of the slot. You're gonna be on the boundary end on the slot. You're more of a complete route tree type of guy. You're not gonna be on the boundary quite as often. You're not gonna be on the line of scrimmage quite as often. You're more like you're running a bunch of whips. You're running a bunch of option routes. Kind of your move everywhere type guy. A little smaller, a little quicker. You got to be quicker as a Z receiver. And that's where, like, I mean, Tyreek Hill. Which, again, I keep using these archetypes that are like, well, all you need to do is be faster and quicker than literally any human that's ever played. It's like
Seth right now is providing the absolute ideal for that role. It's
it's like me as a husband. You know what I mean? It's like this
a little disappointing.
Absolute.
Oh,
okay. You know what? I can't. Yeah, no, that
we're running out of time, man. I know it's June, but
yeah. So the thing with the Chiefs with Andy Reid is that he's quite often relied instead on guys to play like that X receiver role. He's relied on like, hey, you know who can do a lot of that? Jeremy Maclin. Or like, you get guys like, or like, Jason Avant. Like you get guys that are smaller, quicker, smarter route runners, maybe depending on who they are. They're not jump ball guys. He values separation and getting to your spot. He also, and Rich Cooper says this in the chat, and he's absolutely right. Andy likes guys who can play everywhere. Not many X receivers can play Z and Y.
Can I throw another Hall of Fame example at you? I don't know the answer to this, but is that what he had T.O. do?
Yeah, he had T.O.
T.O. was a guy that you could have just been an X receiver who then Andy Reid's like, hello, T.O., I have some ideas.
Well, and like in a Z receiver, like, I mean, they're just more protected from contact would be a great way to think of that. So like, think of like the ideal use of Xavier Worthy would be the Z. Okay.
Andy Reid only had Terrell Owens for 2 years, man. That's crazy.
And he put up numbers like,
21 games, by the way, because is that when he had the leg?
Yeah. Well, he did like the sit-ups in his driveway and all that, which again, the man had like a 20 pack. And I was like, I'd do sit-ups in my driveway shirtless like that too.
He played 14 games in 2004 with Andy Reid. First year in Philly, had 1,200 yards in 14 games.
Yeah.
14 touchdowns.
And so there are more guys. It's just hard to find 6'4" guys that can move. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that's why, you a lot of guys aren't, although Jamar Chase is only 6'1", he just plays like he's like 6'5". But like Jamar Chase can line up in the slot and run a whip route and do it well. Most X receivers are more like a Justin Watson type. They can't line up doing a lot of the stuff that Xavier Worthy can do, or that Rashee Rice can do, or Hollywood Brown can do. And they can at least passably do a lot of the X receiver stuff, maybe just not as well with certain stuff related to contact. That's, and again, I'm butchering the descriptors here because I'm taking it to like 101 type, like, how would I explain this to myself before someone ever explained it to me? Because that's how I need to explain to me, because I'm not very smart. So Andy likes guys who can line up at all three spots. And that's why, unless you get like a T.O. type or a Julio type, or that kind of thing. Because even Megatron wasn't really lining up. He would do like power slot stuff, but he's not running a bunch of, option routes out there. He's a downfield guy. And that's fine. And you can run a slant with him, but that's just because he's so enormous.
Right. Right.
And so Andy likes guys that can line up everywhere. And because of that, I think occasionally you get stuck in the, like, you just aren't able to really do it as well as you'd like in terms of the X receiver stuff. And because Andy moves guys around so much, when people say that Andy doesn't really use an X receiver, there's some truth to that, except his X receiver, by and large, for the last almost decade, has been named Travis Kelce. By and large. Not all the time, because Travis lines up in the slot a ton and in line too. But like if they wanted, like, okay, we want a backside winning receiver on this side. Well, Travis Kelce, because no one in the world's better at it.
Right.
And so that's your X receiver archetype stuff.
And there's a little chicken and egg there, I think, because I wanted to ask, like, outside of Travis Kelce, who is the best receiver Andy Reid's had in Kansas City in that, air quotes, semi-traditional X receiver role? I am curious to know your answer, but I'm very, very confident that player is not close to Travis Kelce at that. So it's again, chicken or egg, we need somebody to line up over there. Do we have the greatest tight end of all time, who's specifically the greatest pass catching tight end of all time? Or do we put MVS over there for this one? Like, well, and that's kind of late in the Travis Kelce arc, obviously. I understand how they end up there. I'm very curious to see if that changes this year and if that changes next year, presumably without Travis Kelce on this team. But do you have one that comes to mind here? Like, this is the guy who I'd like to like drop into the offense.
Like anyone throughout the league who would
that has played for Andy with the Chiefs.
Oh,
who you'd say this is the closest.
Man,
I mean, is it that 1 year of MVS?
As a pure X, probably.
It is, right? I mean,
was probably the best that they've had. He trusted Macklin to do a lot of that stuff, but he was more of a Z, really. Like they had him fall around the tight end and kind of do a lot. But honestly, it was Travis Kelce.
Yeah, right. It's always
people are saying, Dwayne Bowe. You know what? Great drop in Sean Kurtz and T.
I can't believe I didn't mention Dwayne Bowe. I
can
see Dwayne Bowe jersey from my chair right now.
And Bowe, unfortunately,
I don't think about him as an Andy receiver, honestly.
He lost, similar to Clyde, he lost 5% of his explosion and didn't have 5% of his explosion to lose. But that would be a guy, bring me peak Dwayne Bowe and plug him in at X, and we'd be cooking with gas.
Man,
I really everything's cooking with gas today.
I really did want to continue because as I've made clear before, I will not be held back by things like logic or reason regarding Dwayne Bowe or Marcus Peters. I've simply decided that the truth does not matter to me. I have my truth, and that's what I'm holding on to. I know I knew this, but when Bowe went and landed in Cleveland, he played 7 games and then never played again. Like, I mean, it was just like, well, it was Bover is what it was. It was extremely, extremely over at age 31. Which to me right now in my life currently doesn't seem that old.
Right. It's not, but I'm probably not the person you want to hear that from.
I was going to say, it's like you saying that, I was going to say something about hair, but I didn't want to send. I know. I bailed before the joke, but then I still had to tell you what it was. So you wouldn't assume it was something worse.
Somehow made it hurt more, honestly.
I know. And I'm kind of I'm in a mid-level hair place. I haven't gotten a haircut in 6 months. I don't know. Maybe it's not quite my midlife crisis. I'd like to think I got a little while before that lands, but it will be televised. There will be content of whatever, really what both
I'm excited for it. Well, and I mean, with your pancreas and everything.
No, that's true. I mean, there's a really good chance that my midlife crisis was that.
Well, that got dark fast.
I mean, you set it up. No, you said it all.
But no, Chiefs fans, Dwayne Bowe.
No, talk about Dwayne Bowe. You're fine.
He is the guy to think about in terms of being able to handle contact, contested catch stuff, some of those things. Dwayne Bowe would be like your ideal there. I don't think. Let me just take a look, because by the time Andy came in 2013, 2014, Bowe did all right, but not what people were quite hoping for in the offense. And I think some of that, Andy really does rely a lot on sight adjustments and certain things that maybe wasn't quite Dwayne Bowe's thing.
I'm not interested in your truth. Let's get to the last guy we're going to talk about here real quick, because again, there'll be more time to dig in on all of these. And again, we'll probably do more questions on Tuesday if I had to guess, but Seth had this big story come out that covers a lot of players. So it gave us a lot to talk about today. Give me the rundown on Drew Tranquil. What's real and what isn't? How good was he in year 1? How bad was he last year? I think I'll say this, incredibly evident that he should not be overlooked. I think he is. You got one highly paid linebacker, and I don't think most fan bases, not of your own team, but in general, I don't know if most Chiefs fans know 2 linebackers on most other NFL teams. One of those positions that you probably know the star of some sort, but who's the Robin to Batman? Well, Drew Tranquil is the only other linebacker on this team right now, along with Nick Bolton, who Steve Spagnuolo seems to want on the field in passing situations. Like, it is a 2-man list right now on this roster. But assuming that we're going to continue to talk about Leo Chanel as a weapon and talk more about Tranquil in that role, where should we be in the overrating, underrating, all of that cyclical way that we evaluate players? where does Drew Tranquil stand right now? Why is he so important next year?
The thing with Tranquil is that unless Bassa proves something as a rookie, former safety and that kind of stuff, he is by far the most rangy linebacker they have, sideline to sideline, and by far, by a pretty wide margin, the one that has the ability to cover space in coverage, play a variety of roles in coverage, get away with some man looks against tight ends. He can rotate to a number of places while still being good against the run. And that's one thing that separates Tranquil from some coverage-only linebackers. You can also line him up as you could put him in the Sam temporarily and have him take on a tight end right at the line of scrimmage, and he'll do it. Even though he only weighs about 235, 240, he's super physical. So he has the ability to play a variety of roles that Bolton and Chanel can't, or at least can't do very well. And when he does it at a higher level or more consistent levels, what I'd say, when I talk about Drew Tranquil's level of play from 2023 versus 2024, it was about consistency. I don't know, who knows, right? You don't want to psychoanalyze guys. Maybe he felt the need to earn the contract. Maybe I don't know, but he got caught. I hate it when people taking the cheese a little too often and finding himself out of position in coverage and even against the run at times in 2024, to where he just wasn't quite as consistent, and it led to him being a step off, and then you saw him a step late because he was a step off. That's where if he can up the consistency again, it helps defend the middle of the field so much better. It really helped solve their problems against running backs out of the backfield, which was a huge issue for the team for a long time. 2023, suddenly it really tightened up, and there were a lot of reasons for that, but Drew Tranquil was one of them. So that's why he's low-key important. He doesn't get talked about much at all because he's a veteran. He's kind of a known quantity, yeah. But he is a guy who can really raise the ceiling of the defense in terms of consistency in particular because of that versatility.
I think this is hilarious because we have given him the least time out of all of these guys we've talked about today. Just by, I don't know, I put him last you had him, I got him in the middle of the pack. I think I just had it last in the rundown that we sent to Tucker. But it's funny now because I think that he actually has the best argument out of everyone we've talked about today for getting actually overlooked, for being actually like the most underemphasized to this point, which we are also fulfilling by not spending enough time talking about him today. That's on me. I'm going to say that's my bad, but he's going to play a ton. And there's only one linebacker on the roster who the Chiefs want on the field on 3 downs. Leo Chanel's a part-time guy right now.
Mm-hmm.
We have our own questions about Nick Bolton, even though the Chiefs don't really seem to. If Drew Tranquil is a disaster next year, the defense is going to have a really hard time covering for that. If he's great next year, the defense's job's going to get a lot easier. Yes. And if he's okay, then it will be okay. Like that. There aren't a lot of guys in that key of a position who we're not talking about, even in this super meta way that we're talking about them. You think you're gonna do a little Tranquil film review? I know you're gonna pick a few of these guys to look at closer. We're fulfilling it again. I don't know what to look for if I'm reviewing Drew Tranquil's film, but I would be very curious to see you try to clear up the muck a little bit.
I want to try. There's a couple people that I want to consult with first, because inside linebacker is hard. One of the tougher positions for me to gauge. Especially, it's one thing when it's the mic and their responsibilities are a little clearer on a snap-by-snap basis. But with Tranquil, especially in Spag's defense,
you don't know what his job was. Yeah. It's so hard to say, well, he was supposed to do this. Are you sure? Are you sure?
Yeah, because he's so rarely in man coverage. But, I do want to take a look, and he is one of the people whose film I want to look at and see, what the issue was with consistency. I already kind of laid some of it out. I think he found himself a step off. Not a step slow, a step off, which then looks like a step slow because you arrived late. But it's not because you were slow, it's because you were off.
Which is the difference between it looking, we don't know, but looking mental to physical. Because if you said hey, yeah, he had a sore foot all year and it was never bad enough to keep him out of practice, so he was never on the injury report and it made him a half step slower, that kind of thing's happening all the time around the NFL. we just don't hear about it, don't talk about it if it's not like endangering their game day status. But if it's a mental thing, maybe that's better. Maybe that's worse. I don't know. I'm sure you will get to look at every single Steve Spagnuolo defensive snap and give us a detailed breakdown of exactly what he asked every single player to do on the field every given snap. If you want that, you can go ahead and go sign up for the Chief in the North newsletter and just email Seth every single day and say, I demand that impossible project Josh pitched. You can get it for $13 a year, but for $12 a year, you can get everything else that Seth does in the Chief in the North newsletter, mnchiefsfan.substack.com. I think that's done it, Seth. I think we've done more than an hour, which seems absolutely impossible given the day and time it is. With that being said, it's up to you to get us out of here.
Fellas, you know what's not okay? Openly ugly cry sobbing.
Oh.
But you know what is okay? It's okay to cry. It's all right. I've discovered this from my my lovely wife, Jazz, who informed me.
Who? You're married?
Oh, yeah, I am. Actually,
that was somebody else's joke on Tuesday. I'm recycling jokes now. Great.
That was a good joke.
Oh, no, I am tearing up.
Jazz has, and I blame Instagram for this, she has started to build what she calls an ick list, which is apparently just, things that dudes do that are turnoffs.
Yeah, I'm terrified for you, man. Seeing that on paper in ink has got to be a bad day.
No, she hasn't codified it because she loves me.
yeah. Codifying that would make it okay. Continue the story. Sorry, I'm nervous for you.
She is more than willing to be like, I'm gonna need you to stop that because ick. And I'm like, okay. And I've told her that if you're gonna have an ick list, you need to have a yum list or something. And that motion has so far died.
It's dying again here because I do not want to hear Jazz's yum list.
But gentlemen, I have it confirmed from my wife, who of course knows all things. It's okay to cry. It's all about the facial expression while you do it. If you're stoic and the emotions burst through, but you can still speak, that is acceptable. Apparently, ugly crying and sobbing is gross, and you just need to leave the room. So,
you're sure that wasn't specific to you?
Well, I thought they were saving a piece of pizza for me, and so I was just pretty emotional about the whole thing.
I think crying is fine as long as you look good doing it is a very healthy lesson to give, Seth. Good job by you.
I'm just trying to help the kids out.
You know what's on my ick list? Podcasting.
That's probably everyone's ick list.
It should be.